Hey everybody, this is Dilshan and welcome to another video tutorial from the Lazy But Smart Sinhala blog. Episode 4, Your Age in Sinhala. As usual, let's quickly summarize what we saw in episode 3. We learned how to find out someone's country by asking, what is your country? Which in Sinhala is, Oyage rata mokakda. We then saw 2 ways to tell your country to someone, and using the example of Sri Lanka, the first method was to say, my country is Sri Lanka, which was, Mage rata Sri Lankava. The second method was to say, I am from Sri Lanka, and to say this, I first showed you how to say from Sri Lanka by cutting out the last vowel of the country name, which in the case of country names will almost always be the closed A, and we added the indicator N, which signified from. This created the word Sri Lankavan, which means from Sri Lanka. And then the rest was easy. We just added mama to the beginning to say Mama Sri Lankavan, which meant I am from Sri Lanka. And in the last section, I showed you a really easy way to convert a statement into a question, which was to simply add the to the end of the statement. As an example, we asked the question, is your country India? Which was Oyage rata Indiyavada, and are you from Australia? Which was Oya Australia Vinda. Now in this episode, I'm going to give you the remaining personal pronouns which you haven't seen yet. These are we, the plural you, they, and the formal you. We'll then learn the possessives of these new personal pronouns, which will be our, the plural your, their, and the formal your. Using what we learned, we'll then see how you could find out someone's age. The easiest way would be to ask, what is your age? We'll then end this episode by seeing how you could tell someone your age by saying, my age is. Okay, let's start. Section 1, More Personal Pronouns. By now you know that informal you is oya. Let's look at the plural informal you, which is what you will use when speaking to 2 or more familiar people. In English, the closest equivalent would be you all, or in some instances, y'all. All we need to do is take the word oya, add an indicator la to construct the word oyala. Oyala. You remember from episode 2 that we used ge as a possessive indicator for living things, and in episode 3 we used another indicator n, which indicated from. In the same way, la indicates the plural for personal pronouns. Let's look at the next one. You know that he or she is ea. The plural of he or she is they. Note that just like in English, the singular word for they is also gender neutral, meaning that it could be either male or female. Now, to find the word for they, like before, we'll add la to construct the word eala. Eala. Okay, time to learn another new pronoun, which is the formal you. The formal you is oba. Oba. However, keep in mind that in spoken Sinhala, you won't need to use oba that often. For now, even when speaking to a stranger, keep using oya. Later on, when you're more comfortable with the language, you'll be able to improvise and switch between the two. For the plural of formal you, we once again take the word oba, add the indicator la to construct the word obala. Obala. Now let's look at the word for we. You'll need to pay extra attention since this word is an exception and doesn't follow the rule of adding the indicator la. The singular form of we is I, which in Sinhala is mama. You would think that to find the plural of mama, we would take mama, add the indicator la to construct the word mamala. But this is wrong and there is no such word. Instead, the correct word for we is api. Api. Before we use these new words in sentences, let me quickly summarize it for you. So, we is api, plural informal you is oyala, they is eala, which can be applied to both male and female, and the formal you is oba, for which the plural is obala. Now that we have multiple versions of the word you, let me simplify it for you by showing you how I'll indicate them in these tutorials. Just remember that unless I indicate otherwise, by you, I always will mean the informal and singular. Then for the other instances of you, when I indicate PL in small letters, it'll mean informal and plural, FML meaning formal and singular, and FMLPL, which obviously means formal and plural. But don't worry since I won't be using the formal you that much. Okay, now here's the easy part. We can now substitute these new pronouns with the pronouns in sentences that we saw in previous episodes. For example, let's start with the second one, Oyala. Oyala kohomada means how are you, using the plural you, which is something you could use to greet two or more familiar people. Api hondin innawa means we are fine, which in fact could be a response to Oyala kohomada. Similarly, Eala Sri Lankaven means they are from Sri Lanka, and Obala Australiavinda means are you from Australia, which is something you could ask a group of unfamiliar people. Section 2. Possessives of these new pronouns. Let's learn how to say the plural and informal yo. We saw in episode 2 that we added ge to indicate the possessive form of a personal pronoun, and this is exactly what we'll continue to do with these new pronouns. So, we take oyala, we add the indicator ge, and we construct the word oyala ge, which means the plural and informal yo. Similarly, to say there, we take the word eala, we add the indicator ge, and we construct the word eala ge, which means there. And we can also do the same with obala, where we will once again add the indicator ge to construct the word obala ge, which is the formal and plural yo. Let's find out how to say our in Sinhala. You'll remember from episode 2 that we came across an exception to this possessive rule when we learned that the possessive of mama was mage. In the same way, pay attention since the word for our is also an exception. You would expect to take the word api, add the indicator ge to construct the word api ge, but this is wrong. Instead, the correct word for our is ape. Ape. Again, before we put them in sentences, let me summarize it for you. Ape means our, oyalage means informal and plural yo, ealage means there, which can be used for both male and female, and obalage means formal and plural yo. To put them in sentences, we can now substitute these new possessives with the possessives in sentences that we saw in previous episodes. For example, we could say Ape rata Sri Lankava, which means our country is Sri Lanka. We could ask a group of familiar people, Oyalage rata mokagda, which means what is your country? Similarly, Ealage rata Engalante means their country is England, and we could ask a group of unfamiliar people, Obalage rata Indiavada, which means is your country India? Section 3. Asking someone their age. Okay, now that we've covered the new personal pronouns and their possessives, let's get to the main part of this episode, which is to learn how you could ask someone, what is your age? You should know that in Sinhala, this is the same as asking, how old are you? In episode 2, we learned to ask, what is your name? Which was, Oyage nama mokakda, where the word is was implied and the sentence literally read, your name what? In episode 3, we learned how to ask, what is your country? Which was, Oyage rata mokakda, where once again the word is was implied and the sentence literally read, your country what? So when asking what is your age, we now know that the word is will be implied and we need to create a sentence that literally reads, your age what? You already know that your is oyage. However, the word for age is something you don't know yet. This word is vayasa. Vayasa. Now pay attention as this is important. You would think that like before, that to complete this sentence, we just add the word for what, which is mokakda, to ask, oyage vayasa mokakda. In all honesty, if you use this sentence this way, no one is going to misunderstand you. They will know exactly what you're asking about, which is about someone's age. However, it's not entirely correct. That's because when it comes to asking the age in Sinhala, we literally ask, your age how much, instead of what. The word for how much is kiyada. Kiyada. Once again, you won't have to memorize this word since this is one more word which we will use very, very often. So to ask what is your age, we say Oyage vayasa kiyada. Similarly, what is his or her age is Eage vayasa kiyada. And what is your age using the formal you is Obage vayasa kiyada. If we wanted to replace these pronouns with their plurals, everything else in the sentence structure will stay the same. For example, Oyalage vayasa kiyada is what is your age using the plural you. Ealage vayasa kiyada is what is their age, and Obalage vayasa kiyada is what is your age using the formal and plural your. Before we go on to section 4, here's a quick tip for you. When asking the price, for example when shopping, or the fare, for example when taking a taxi or a tuk-tuk, you ask kiyada, which means how much. We'll see this in a future episode, but I thought it'll be useful for you to know that already. Section 4. Telling someone your age. Let's assume that you're 30 years old. The easiest way to tell your age is to say the equivalent of my age is 30. In episode 2, you learned to say my name is Pat, which was Mage nama Pat, where the word is was implied and the sentence literally read my name Pat. In episode 3, you learned how to say my country is Sri Lanka, which was Mage rata Sri Lankava, where once again the word is was implied and the sentence literally read my country Sri Lanka. So when saying my age is 30, we now know that the word is will be implied and that we need to create a sentence that literally reads my age 30. You know that my is mage and that age is vayasa. And I'll give you the word for 30, which is tihai. But don't try to remember this word. I'll once again put up a list of numbers on my site from which you can look up your age. Now, my age is 30 is mage vayasa tihai. Similarly, your age is 30 is oyage vayasa tihai. His or her age is 30 is eage vayasa tihai. And your age is 30 using the formal you is obage vayasa tihai. If we wanted to replace these possessives with their plurals, everything else in the sentence structure stays the same. For example, ape vayasa tihai is our age is 30. Oyalage vayasa tihai is your age is 30 using the plural you. Ealage vayasa tihai is their age is 30 and obalage vayasa tihai is your age is 30 using the formal and plural your. And that's it for today. Let's recap what you have learned at the end of this episode. You now know some new personal pronouns. You know that we is api, plural you is oyala, de is eala, formal you is oba, and the plural of formal you is obala. We then use these in sentences that we saw in previous episodes by simply substituting the pronoun with whichever new pronoun we wanted. I won't be reading them out again, but go ahead and pause the video if you want to look quickly through them. After that, we went on to see the possessives of these personal pronouns. You now know that our is ape, the plural your is oyalage, their is ealage, and the formal your is obage, for which the plural of formal your is obalage. We once again use these in sentences that we saw in previous episodes by simply substituting the possessive with whichever new possessive we wanted. In section 3, we saw the word for age, which was vayasa. Using this, we learned how to ask what is your age, which was oyage vayasa kiyada. We then replaced oyage with all the personal pronouns we have seen so far to see the different variations of this question. And in the last section, you learned how to say my age is 30, which was mage vayasa tihai. We then replaced mage with all the personal pronouns to see different ways of telling someone's age. In the next episode, we'll learn how to talk about the language you speak. You'll get your first look at how verbs behave in Sinhala, and we'll use the verbs doing and speaking as examples. I'll show you how to create simple sentences in the present tense. You'll learn to say I speak English or any other language you want to specify, and you'll also learn to ask someone, do you speak English? To download a free PDF of this episode, go to the Lazy But Smart Sinhala blog by clicking on the link mentioned in the description below. Don't forget to check out the extras of episode 4 by clicking on this link. The list of the numbers to look up your age can also be found on my site, There's a link to this page on the description box below. Well, that's it, and thanks for listening and hope you found it useful. I'm Dilshan and I'll talk to you on the next episode.